James DeLeon. Very nice to meet you, Your Honor.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you as well.
Thank you. It's my honor to be able to interview you today.
Well, it's my honor to have you interview me.
Thank you. So I've read a little about you, and I know that you are from Philadelphia.
Yes, I am.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in West Philadelphia,
Okay.
on 53rd and Arch, where I went to Our Lady of Victory Parochial School, and then I went to West Philadelphia Catholic High School for Boys.
Okay. And was there anything about that early Catholic education that kind of steered you to a career in the law, or?
Just reading.
Okay.
Okay, they were big sticklers on reading, and that's what I did at an early age, from reading comic books straight through high school.
Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a brother.
And what's the age difference?
He's 2 years younger than me, and I also have a stepbrother who's 2 years older than me, and I had a stepsister who was 1 year younger than me, but she passed about 13, 14 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So was there something about growing up in the household that you grew up in that emphasized education, or was this were you self-driven?
No, it was really self-driven.
Okay.
My mother and father broke up from right when he came back from the Korean War. My dad was a World War II and a Korean War veteran, saw a lot of combat. I don't know exactly what happened between he and my mother, but they broke up. So when growing up as a child, it was very rough. My brother and I was telling my son the other day that we actually had holes in our shoes where we would put paper in. It was rough.
Yeah. But you managed to persevere. Did you have anyone outside of your household that kind of guided you and helped you out?
My grandmother and other family members in the neighborhood that I grew up in was very close. So we used to go to Charleston, South Carolina for summer vacation, right from when we were 3, 4, 5 years old up until we were 14, 15. And there we were part of the civil rights movement in Charleston. In my household, they used to have the meetings there where they would launch the civil rights plans. So I was part of that entire situation.
Did you have Gullah Geechee roots?
I used to do the whole deal.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about the civil rights work in your early life. How was that organized?
Okay. So, of course, I was young.
Yeah.
And of course, but I saw it all happen. I saw the sit-ins happen. I was part of the Woolworth sit-ins when I was 12 years old, and the students were marching on Woolworths that at that time in Charleston was at King and Calhoun Street, and I only lived 2 blocks away on Calhoun Street. I would go there with them and at 12 years old and hold signs, and my grandmother was scared because this kid named Emmett Till, he had been kidnapped because he had whistled at a white girl, and they found him dead. So they thought that because of my actions with the sit-ins that I would end up similar to him. So they took me out of line and sent me right back to Philadelphia. So
Yeah.
that was that.
What is it about growing up in that time where you saw so much change and tumult? Is there anything about that informed your decision to go to law school eventually?
Well, in high school, there were only like about 100 people of color, boys of color, because it was a boys' high school, out of 4,000 students. It was a large high school. But it was fun. There was a lot of fun in high school. I can't say too much about it in the sense of being negative. There were race riots between West Philadelphia High School and the white kids at West Catholic High School when they were on the subway, the buses, the trolleys. that type of thing. But at our school itself, we were really, really a close-knit group of people, and we had a lot of fun. High school was a great experience. I left high school and I went to Howard University. Now, I did not know that much about Howard because my family in the South, they were more attuned to Fisk and Hampton, but I ended up going to Howard. So at Howard, I was part of the student movement. I was part of the anti-war movement, although I was in ROTC at that time.
How did that work?
It was different.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when the Black Panthers, we were all together, and I don't know if it was Huey or H. Rap.
Huey Newton.
Well,
or
H. Rap,
Brown.
yeah, I knew those guys.
Yep.
And
Wow.
what happened was that they wanted me, because they didn't know how to accept me, because like you said, I was in ROTC, but I was part of the anti-war movement, and they wanted me to go to Baltimore with them, and I couldn't, I had ROTC that day, so I wasn't going to skip and leave my platoon to go to Baltimore, and the car that they went in was blown up.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where H. Rap Brown disappeared.
Yeah.
And there was a guy named Ralph Featherstone and I think two other people that were killed in the car. So I was supposed to be one of the guys in that car.
Wow.
But I ended up, going to ROTC. And I graduated as a second lieutenant in the Corps of, I ended up being in the Corps of Engineers. First, I was in military intelligence, and they wanted me to go underground with the anti-war movement. And I told them that wasn't what I was going to do. So I switched out of military intelligence and I went into the Corps of Engineers, where I ended up staying for the 15 years that I was in the Army. But
where is this in relation to the Vietnam War?
in the Vietnam War, this was, during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I went to Howard from 1965. I graduated in 1970. I was in the Army as a lieutenant from 1970 until 1985. So it was during the entire Vietnam War period of time. And the funny thing is that I met Martin Luther King the last time he spoke at Howard. I was with him. I was on his Poor People's Campaign, and I worked for Robert Kennedy. One of my professors at Howard, a history or political science professor, I forget exactly which subject matter, but I didn't know it. But he was a black man, a light-skinned black man, but he was in the Korean War with my dad.
Oh, wow.
And he was my dad's commanding officer, but I didn't know that at the time. But somehow I ended up in this class, and he gave me the opportunity to be what's known as a precinct captain in Washington. And a precinct captain is similar to the ward leaders that we have here in Philly. So I had my own staff, and I was a senior in college, and we were working for to elect Robert Kennedy as president. So I got involved with that. So that was the first time I got into politics, and Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, I was there with all of them. I was part of the entire takeover of schools. Howard was the first school in the country to take over a campus. And then after we took over, then of course it started spreading where Columbia, other schools started taking it over. But the reality was it was Howard that had the first takeover. And we took over the school twice.
Wow.
And I was part of that both times. So.
Yeah. It was a time of amazing possibilities, but also very, very tense and intense time.
Because they were killing, well, to us as students, we felt that there was that they wanted to kill college students because they had killed the kids over at Kent State and they killed kids at Jackson State. So at Howard in 1970, we had decided that we needed to have self-defense classes taught to the students. So the administration balked at that. So We took over the school the second time. Now, what was funny about that particular takeover, we started giving self-defense classes to all the students while we were negotiating to open the school up. Because when I'm talking about the school, I'm talking about the medical school, the dental school, the undergrad, nursing, divinity, law, everything. The whole university was shut down. When we made the agreement to open back up, we opened up under the following criteria: that the students could have two choices as far as their courses that they were missing. They could either take a grade or a P for passing. So that meant that 12,000 students at Howard University did not fail.
Right, right. With the hard.
Never happened in
Yeah.
So that's two things that Howard did that no one has ever done before.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So what was it about that experience, or what did that experience? How did that crystallize your vision moving forward?
Well, the war was going on when I graduated, obviously, in 1970. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army, and all my peers were going away to med school, dent school, MBAs, wherever they were going. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't going to Vietnam, because Vietnam, I liked the Vietnam. I liked the Vietnamese people. I had friends that were Vietnamese. So, and the war was wrong. And I'm about protecting my country, but I'm not about going to war unjustly. So, I decided at that time to start working on a PhD, because the year that I received my commission, I was a distinguished military graduate. And being that, you get two choices before this particular year. You got a choice to either go regular Army, which was a 3-year tour of duty, or you go Reserve Army, which was a 2-year tour of duty. But that year, they had a third option, which they only had that particular year. They never had it before. They haven't had it since. It was Reserve Army, go to school. Okay, so I went to school. So I just stayed in school, and I didn't have Uncle Sam pay for it, because if they paid for it, then you would have to give them the commitment in order to pay the money back. So I just, first I went to grad school, where I worked on a joint PhD and master's in public administration, and then I flipped out of there to law school. So I started law school in 1972. To the Delaware Law School, which was a new law school, because I didn't want to wait to go to school, and they allowed me in, and I was the first in my class. I was the only person of color in my class going to law school.
And that the Delaware Law School is now Widener University?
Yes.
School of Law.
Yes.
Tell me, how was that experience, and how was it? Did you feel like you had to carry being the only Black student there?
I don't know what it is with being white people. It was fun.
Okay.
It was fun. The school was close. Yes, I was the only person of color. There was another person of color that was in the first year, because I was in the second class.
Okay.
So there was a guy named Bob Early. He was in the first class, and he was the first person of color that went to that school. And I was the second to go to that school. So the dean was a very smart individual. He had what's known, like as attorneys, we have Juris Doctorates. The highest that you can go is called a Science of Juris Doctorate. This individual had 2 of them. He had one from Cambridge in England, and he had one from Chicago. So very smart individual. When I first went up to the school, he met every student coming through at the door. And when I came up, he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Jimmy DeLeon." He said, "Oh yeah, I did let you in." Okay. So it was good. I worked to get more minorities in the school, And I was part of, they have the Black American Law Students Association. I was the founder, one of the founders of that organization there at the school. Once I got a couple of people in, so it could just not just be me,
Right.
okay, you know. So,
Yes.
and it's really grown.
Yeah. So being a pioneer is something that that you've grown accustomed to. Um, is there? I know that you've done a few things in your life aside from being in the laws. Can you talk about that?
Well, when I was in law school, we used to own. I was part of an organization called the Best of Friends, and there were 5 of us here in Philadelphia. But we had the Best of Friends were in other cities as well. They were in New York, Washington, Baltimore, Boston, Charleston, and our whole idea was economic growth, and we would do economic growth through nightclubs where we would accumulate money, and the money that we would accumulate through people coming to have a good time, we would invest into other nightclubs, into music, into homes, you know, depending on the city that the organization was in. And the idea was that at least one of the individuals in the organization would be an attorney. So I was the attorney, well, getting ready to be the attorney in the Philadelphia organization. And we used to gross like, you know, $3-4 million a year. And the attorneys that were our attorneys at that time became very well-known attorneys here in Philadelphia. John Braxton, Bob Archie, Nolan Atkinson, all these, Jack St. Gerard Jordan, all these individuals who are really well-known attorneys now in the city were our attorneys back at that time as we were growing. So I did that for a period of time until one of my partners was kidnapped by an organization called the JBM, Junior Black Mafia, and that led to, it became a big FBI bust, but the fact was that we had to change from doing nightclubs the way we were doing. We couldn't do what we were doing anymore. And I ended up practicing law. So
How long now, where was your law practice when you were practicing?
it was in Philadelphia.
What part of, was it
In
the
Center City.
It was in Center City.
It was in Center City. My brother, what happened was that when the club business went down, my brother, he had opened up a school in San Francisco teaching 24 and 48 track recording studio training. And he brought that school to Philadelphia. And it was in Center City at 1315 Walnut Street. And I was trying to, I just had a brand new baby. I was waiting for the bar results to come in. And he said, look, you don't want to have your law practice in the neighborhood. You need to be down here in Center City. So I went down and I worked in his school while he was still out in California. So I ran the school here in Philadelphia, and I passed the bar exam. And then the office where we had the school became my law office. And then my stepbrother, he had married a young lady whose brother was a city council member. And he also was the chairman of the Philadelphia Housing Authority. So he brought me in 1978 to the Philadelphia Housing Authority, where I became the first black attorney at the Philadelphia Housing Authority. So I worked there from 1978 to 1985. But at that time, you could have both, you could have a private practice and you could work for the public.
Right.
You know, but that changed with Wilson Good. But anyway, that's where I was for that period of time until I left there in 1983, and I had my law practice until I was elected to the bench in 1987.
Okay. Now, what about all of those varied experiences? I know that you, in addition to the things you've mentioned, you are also artistic, you're a musician, you're a playwright.
Yes.
Among all of those things that you've done, how how did that help you when you got to the bench?
Well, initially, it didn't,
Okay.
except in the sense of dealing with people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're on the bench, obviously, you deal with people. When I first came on the bench, I was 39 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came on the bench, that particular year, they had something called the roofer scandal. So there were like 8 judges that were removed from the bench. 2 of them were in the municipal court, and the others were on the Court of Common Pleas. So that meant that we had a depleted court, both CP and MC. I was a brand new judge, but I was doing Common Pleas work and MC work right off the bat, the first year. So, matter of fact, I did that CP work until I left the bench in 2021. How it helped me, having the artistic side, it was more or less in dealing with people. But the president judge, who was Judge Silverstein, he decided that he wanted to put me in the homicide room. So as soon as I came on this court, after 6 months of being on this court, I was put in the homicide room. So it ended up that for the remainder of my time on the court, I was basically a homicide judge. Homicide, domestic violence, rape. Those were what I would do on the criminal side. And in order to clear my head, I would ask to be flipped over to the civil side so I could, do something a little bit different.
I know that you had how many years on the bench?
34.
34 years on the bench.
Yeah.
And you were still a young man.
Relatively speaking.
You've done some very interesting things since leaving the bench. Do you want to talk a little about that?
Okay. Well, it was really funny because, like when you're on the bench, you're in a bubble. You can't do too much. You brought up earlier that I'm a playwright.
Yes.
And I did write a play. I wrote a couple of plays while I was on the bench, and they were picked up by the Washington, D.C. African American Festival and Playwright Festival, and they won. But the funny thing was, I had to get permission from the ethics, the Board of Ethics, because I had to raise money to put on the play.
Right. Wow.
Now, no one thought that I would get the permission to raise money because I had to go out to attorneys.
Yeah.
I had to go to people, the people that I knew to get the money to put on the plays.
Mm-hmm.
And the Ethics Commission said I could do it, okay, which was
Wow.
amazing.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I raised this money, I raised all this money, and I put on the plays that I'd written, and the plays won. So,
Wow.
and now they're on YouTube. One was called the Michelle play, and the other was called The Conversation.
Yes.
So okay, so that was that. So now, I'm leaving the bench in December 31st of 2021. Now, before I left the bench, they put me in homicide for the last 2 weeks because that was the send-off. That, I was in the homicide room on the send-off. Now, the thing about being in the homicide room is things are really strange in that room. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of death, but the year that I retired, an attorney that was representing a young man who had killed a police officer in the courtroom, which is a courtroom that has bulletproof glass, where the people are on one side and the staff and defendants and cops are on the other side. Her water broke and she started having a baby
Oh my goodness.
right there in the courtroom,
Oh my goodness.
right in the middle of the hearing for a cop killer. that she was representing.
Wow.
So everything had to change around.
Yeah.
And I had to, I had the YouTube. I had the court officer pull up how to deliver a baby. Okay. I had the sheriffs. One of the sheriffs said, "I know how to deliver a baby." And so I
Wow.
said, so I had my president judge. He came. He just happened to be there. And I had my law clerk. I said, and young ladies. I said, "You got to get some towels.
Yeah.
Get some towels and water." So anyway, the way that ended was, and I had to explain to the people because everything changed.
Sure.
From
Sure.
from this how we're so serious, and then all of a sudden I'm rushing around and all this. So as far we got her to the hospital, and within 15 minutes, like after she had left the court, 15 minutes later she had a baby boy.
Wow.
So it was like that close.
Yeah.
So okay, so
What a send off in your last 2 weeks in the homicide room.
I had COVID. The last
Oh,
2
gosh.
weeks I had COVID.
Oh, goodness.
And
Yeah.
at that time, they weren't doing the 5 days. Even though it was recommended that you can only stay out for 5 days,
Yeah.
we were still on the 10-day thing.
Sure.
So the whole 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh,
So I
goodness.
was finished. Okay,
Wow.
so I had to retire. I was gone when January came in. I had to clear out my chambers. I didn't clear my chambers out till like January 4th of 2022. But now I'm out of the bubble.
Yeah.
But you're still scared as to what you can do, what you can't do. But now I'm practicing law. So I said, what can I do? So the Denver Broncos were for sale. So,
I wasn't expecting to go there, but okay. Denver Broncos are for sale.
so I said, darn, I can actually work on trying to get somebody to buy the Denver Broncos. So I ended up getting with a good friend of mine named Alan Rothenberg and some other people, and we put together a group, and one of the people in the group had a black billionaire from New York.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to buy the Denver Broncos. Okay, so we put the Denver Broncos went for $4.2 billion to the Walmart heir.
Mm-hmm.
We put in a bid for $4.3 billion. Okay, but we were a day.
Almost.
Yeah, almost. They had taken the bid for 4.2
Yeah.
the day before we put in the 4.3.
Wow.
So didn't get that. But I was in on it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that was the year 2022.
Okay.
So the next year was 2023. Now, while on the bench, I was the first black supervising judge of the criminal division of municipal court. And I was the supervising judge for like 7 years. During the time I was supervising judge, gun violence had decreased in the city of Philadelphia. When I was going out, okay, so that was back 1997 to 2005. When I was going out in 2021, gun violence was on the rise. And I'm looking at these city council members who keep on blaming everything on the mayor. But yet they want to run for mayor. But they haven't done anything, in my estimation, to reduce gun violence as to what they could do. None of them, as a group, went to the mayor's office and told the mayor, we're here because we want to work with you to reduce gun violence. They just kept on saying it was the mayor. So I got like really pissed off, truthfully. So I said, okay, I'm running for mayor. Okay, I'm going to bring the judicial aspect into the mayor's race. So in 2023, I decided to run for mayor. So as soon as I go into, let's say in November of 2022, I think that's when I made the announcement, everything is fine. December of 2022, I get sick. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So now, but I got to still run because I'm in it. So I run through this entire mayor's race sick. But I ran because I was tired of the killings. And I wanted to bring attention to the fact that certain things could be done to reduce killings. You know, and one thing when the first interview, the first mayoral forum I gave, I brought into the mayoral forum the concept of a public safety director. The city council members listened to me when I was going and talking about this, and they changed the city charter to make a public safety director. So that's, so that's the thing that I guess the citizens of Philadelphia will have going forward in eternity.
That's a win that's a win that your campaign brought to the fore.
The public safety director. That was me. Okay,
Yeah.
that was me.
Yeah.
So, and then, Sherelle Parker is a great mayor, and I enjoyed campaigning against her. I just wish that I was more, I wish I could have gave her everything I had, that's all that, but.
Well, I can tell that you are still energized and filled with vigor, so I am.
Thank you.
Yeah, that there's more to come.
Yeah,
Am I right
hopefully
about
so.
that?
Oh yeah, you're definitely
Yeah.
right about that. Now I'm practicing law,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's and I'm the lead attorney for the Democratic City Committee.
Okay.
So, and I've made, since I've been off the bench, I have helped make about like 20 new judges. So I brought them down.
Yeah.
I introduced them to the system, and now they've become judges. So
Judge DeLeon, I could talk to you for another 17 hours.
I know.
But unfortunately, I think our time is drawing to a close, but it's been my honor and a privilege to talk to you. What an interesting life. Thank you so much.
Thank you.